Hi, everyone. I'm just going to wait like 2 more minutes to see if anyone else pops in, but I will open the chat. If you want to just say hi, if you don't, totally okay too. I hope you can see and hear me okay. If you can't, let me know. And I can share my screen. Can you guys see my screen? If you want to let me know. That would not be fun if you couldn't. I can create a poll. I'm not sure if anyone can see my screen. That's going to be hard. I think maybe. Well, anyways, we can get things going. I was going to start this off with if you had any questions. I'm not sure who's here, so if you have any specific questions about any topic, we can start with those because I want to answer any questions you may have first. So if whoever's here wants to drop it in the chat, I can answer your questions. Let me know. If not, I can just go through my presentations if you'd like. However, I am not sure if my screen is sharing. So I think there's currently still people watching, so anyone who's watching, want to let me know. This is my first Vimeo stream. So let me try this. There we go. Okay. So please, before I move on, I'm hoping everyone can hear me. And before I move on, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. I'll delete this. I just put one poll up to see if you could hear me. I just want to make sure. I think you should be able to. But also I don't want to be here talking to myself the whole time if no one else can hear me. And yeah, once we do that, we can get started. should be able to hear me. I'm also going back and forth between this and Discord, so if you are having trouble getting to me on here, you can go to Discord. So let me get started with this, and we'll talk about phrases and cadences as our first topic. So today in this stream, we'll be covering phrases and cadences first, and then we'll be moving on to non-chord tones, or non-harmonic tones, as some people like to call them. But yeah, so let's start off with phrases and cadences. I had an example also of 4-part harmony writing in here, but we can skip that. Yes, let me just check one more thing. Okay. So obviously at ThinkFiveable on all the social medias. And like I said, I gave you the overview. We were going to do a part writing review, but unless someone puts that in the chat that they want that, I think we can skip over that one. If you want that, just let me know and I can always come back to it. And we're gonna, the example of the part writing, you'll see cadences, all the different types we'll talk about, and we'll define what a phrase is and what a cadence is, and then if you have any questions after that. So this is just the example, and you can always come back and do it, and then I did it also for you, so you can just use that for future practice. This slideshow is up on the AP Music Theory Hub, which I will show you in a little bit. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything. If someone just wants to write in the chat, that would be cool, just so that I know you can. Or I can try and open the question and answer part. So it won't appear in the chat, it'll appear to me. So that's open, the Q&A, so if you need to put your questions in there, let me know. So, and let me check Discord. No one said anything. Cool. Okay, so a phrase is a substantial musical thought that ends with a musical punctuation called a cadence. So a phrase is usually anywhere from 2 to 4 measures long, and it usually contains one melody throughout, one melody that's flowing throughout that one phrase, and will be ended with a cadence. So like the melody might change in a different phrase. So like the first 4 measures of a piece might be phrase A, for example. They like to use letters to determine what each phrase is. Phrase A might be one musical thought. So when I say musical thought, I mean one cohesive piece of music that might not be so similar to the next 4 measures of that music. So, and that's ended with a cadence. A cadence, which is what I'll mostly be talking about in this presentation, is a 2-chord progression. So it happens over the span of 2 chords when you're doing part writing that occurs at the very end of a phrase. So like I just said, it ends a phrase. So let's look at different types of cadences. Let me just check. I'm going to type a message. Says there are people watching, so that would be cool if someone could respond. So let me go back. It skipped a slide. So authentic cadences. An authentic cadence is when the phrase ends with a 2-chord progression that's either a 7 diminished chord or a 5 chord going to a 1 chord. So this is probably the most well-known and most recognizable cadence is the perfect authentic cadence, a PAC, as we like to abbreviate it. So a PAC is that 5-to-1 chord progression with both chords in root position. So just to review that, root position is when they are not inverted at all. So that means the root of the chord, that 5, is in the bass. That's the lowest note. So PAC is a 5-to-1 progression with both chords in root position. Also, the soprano voice. So the soprano voice is the very top voice, because if you're going from top down, it's soprano, alto, tenor, bass. So soprano voice is on the top. The soprano voice of the 1 chord, which is the 2nd chord, as we see here, I'm hoping you can see my cursor, that would be the tonic of the scale, which is the first note of the scale that the piece, scale of the key that the piece is in. So let's say you were in the key of D, or we'll use this example that's right here. You're in the key of, this isn't right, this key. So let's ignore that. But so if you were in the key of D, just thinking out here, the tonic of a D scale is D because that's the very first note. So that means the D would have to be in the soprano voice of that 1 chord, which is the 2nd chord in the chord progression. So I wanted to listen to a few of these. But we can. Okay. I wasn't sure. So we'll listen to all those at the end and just compare the differences between them. But also, like I said, you can go into the hub and this will be there and you'll be able to click on the links if you want to come back to it later. So that is authentic cadences, and more specifically, perfect authentic cadences, PAC. So then we move on to imperfect authentic cadences. So an imperfect authentic cadence, notated as an IAC, consists of the chord progression of a 7 diminished to 1 or a 5-to-1 chord progression like we saw in the last slide. And the chords do not have to be in root position for this one. So they can be inverted. So there are 3 types of imperfect authentic cadences. So the first one is root position, which we see an example of here. A root position IAC is just like a PAC, perfect authentic cadence, that we learned about in the last slide, but the highest voice, the soprano, in that 1 chord is not the tonic. So as I was saying that before, that D would have to be in the soprano voice if it were a perfect authentic cadence. It does not have to be here. That makes it an imperfect authentic cadence. An inverted IAC is also similar to a PAC, but one or both chords are inverted. Simple as that. You might have a 5-6 to a 1 chord. Anything that's inverted there. And finally, a leading tone imperfect authentic cadence is when the 5 chord is replaced with the leading tone. So that is this one right here. Okay, I'm just going to keep going back to check and see if anyone has said anything. Not yet. I just want to make sure no one's telling me that anything is wrong on Discord. Okay. So Moving on, we have half cadences, and a half cadence is any cadence ending on the dominant chord, which is the 5 chord, no matter what chord precedes it. So before, when we were talking about authentic cadences, we were talking about a 2 chord progression that was a 5 to a 1. But now this is, you could say, a 1 to a 5, or any chord going to a 5 chord. So this is very distinct when you're listening to a piece of music and it sounds incomplete or suspended, and that means it's a weak cadence because it doesn't sound like it completes the phrase. It's not doesn't really sound like it finishes the musical thought that we were talking about before. Okay. A plagal cadence. So now we're getting into ones that you should know. Definitely for any tests or quizzes, you should know these types of cadences. However, they're not as common as the ones we have talked about in the previous slides. So a plagal cadence goes from a 4, also known as the subdominant chord, to a 1, which is the tonic chord. This is known as the Amen cadence because it's used heavily in hymns. And that's just good to know because it's the, like, you can hear it in your head. And when I play them later, you will be able to hear that. And a deceptive cadence is when the 5 chord goes to a chord that is not the 1 chord. So this is when we were talking about perfect authentic cadence, the very first cadence we talked about, that's a 5 to a 1. This deceptive cadence is deceptive because it starts on a 5, but it goes to a chord that isn't the 1 chord. So you might want to think, oh, maybe this is a PAC, but it's because it's deceptive. It's deceiving you. And you have to listen for that second chord in the progression. A lot of the time it resolves to a 6 chord. So it's a 5 chord to a 6 chord. A good amount of the time. Okay. And next we have a Phrygian cadence. Phrygian. I was taught Phrygian. But a Phrygian cadence occurs when there is a progression from the 4 chord to a 5 chord. So from 4 to 5. And this is very rare, not often written in music, but might be asked in a question, just to test knowledge. And this is the point where if you have questions about cadences, I would love to answer them. If anyone wants to let me know if they have any questions, that would be very cool. And if we don't, I'm assuming we're okay with the information that I handed you, and we can move on. So that's the end of that presentation, but I want to go back and play you guys the examples of each audio. So let me do that. Let me stop sharing this. Now you're back on me, so let me open this. Okay, share screen again. So this is just a great resource. This website has all this info on cadences, and this is also linked in the hub. under the topic cadences. So let me play you the perfect authentic cadence. So as you hear, that one sounds very final, very concluding to that thought, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's the end of a piece. It just means it's the end of that musical thought. So then we move on to an imperfect authentic cadence. And this is just showing you all three examples between root position IC, inverted, and leading tone. Okay. So still final sounding, just not as clear as the perfect authentic cadence. And here's the half cadence. So that was a example from Happy Birthday, and as you could tell, that felt incomplete. And that's what a half cadence is. That's that progression that ends on the 5 chord and does not sound complete. That's why it's called half cadence. Then we'll go to Plagal Cadence. Perfect. So that one is what I was talking about, is known as the Amen cadence, because you can hear that kind of like da da, like it's resolving that way. And here we go with the Deceptive Cadence. So I just wanted to play that one twice because it is, like I said, starts on a 5 chord and is deceiving you to think it might be an authentic cadence, but it's actually going to probably a 6 chord, so a 5 and 6. And then I will play the Phrygian Cadence. Just that's on a different website, so let me get that really quick. And anytime you need to leave a question in the chat, let me know. And we'll wait for this to load. So this is an example of a Phrygian cadence. And we'll go to this one. Play that one more time. That one sounded a little dark, but gives you the idea. So if no one has any questions on cadences, just let me know if you do. But if not, I will be moving on to talking about non-chord tones. I call them non-chord tones. Some teachers call them non-harmonic tones. You'll see the other kind of names for them. I put them in the presentation. But I learned them as non-chord tones. And personally, these are one of my favorite things to do in music theory, is finding these when you're analyzing a piece. So that's that. I will share my screen with this one. Okay. And I do check back to see if there are questions, like I said, if you have any. So let's get talking about non-chord tones. And also, I'll show you at the end how I like to set up my notes on how I learned non-chord tones. I also made flashcards about the different kinds because these are definitely terms and things you should be looking out for. So I'll just get right into it. So a non-chord tone is a note that does not belong to the given chord. So if you have a you're in the key of D, we'll use this example one more time, and it's a 1 chord. That's D, F sharp, A. However, you may notice that on that same chord in the music, there's another note that doesn't fit in. It might be a G. And it always doesn't happen within every single chord. There's usually found in the melody that's like 8th notes or 16th notes, which you'll see as we go along. But so it does not fit into that given chord that you're writing the Roman numeral for on the bottom. So like I was trying to explain before, a non-chord tone can also be referred to as embellishing tones or non-harmonic tones. And non-chord tones are classified by how the note is approached and how that note is left by either a step, leap, or the same tone. So this will all make a bit more sense when we look at some of the examples. And most dissonance happens. So dissonance is a lack of harmony among musical notes. So AKA when a note doesn't belong into the chord. That's what dissonance means because it doesn't sound or look like it fits in the chord. So most dissonance happens on a weak beat and are usually approached or resolved by a step. So when I say a weak beat, that means it's when we count 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, it's probably on that and. It's not on the downbeat, though. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's very unlikely. It's probably on the 1 and 2 and, like that kind of stuff. Okay. So let's take a look at the different types of non-chord tones. I'm going to come back to this Google Doc at the end because it's very, very important, and I think it will be helpful as to how you want to set up your notes on this or make flashcards on it. And some of you who already know what these are, it's just a nice reference sheet. So a passing tone is a note that's approached by a step, which a step just means going up or down 1. So if you were on C, a step down is going to B, and a step up is going to D. So it's just one singular step, and it is resolved also by a step in the same direction. So as you see here, this is our passing tone that's in red, and it's approached by a single step, and it's resolved by another step that's going in the same direction, So I think that one's pretty self-explanatory. It's also a very common non-chord tone. And then we move on to a neighboring tone. So this one is approached by a step, just like the last one. However, it is then resolved by a step in the opposite direction. As we see here, this D is the neighboring tone, and it is approached by a step, and then it's resolved by a step in the opposite direction. So it's not going up like the last one, it's going down. And that's why it's called a neighboring tone, because it's like you're going up one and then you're coming back. Like you're going to your neighbor's house and then you're coming back. That's how I remember it. Okay. So the next two aren't as common as those last two, but they're equally as important. So a retardation is approached by the same tone and resolved by a step up. So as we see here, same tone, B as the same here. So this is kept. Approached by the same tone, doesn't always have to have a tie. Approached by the same tone and resolved with a step up to C. So in this case, the non-chord tone would be this B right here. And a lot of times you want to like circle those and identify what kind of non-chord tone it is. Whenever you come upon something that doesn't fit into the chord, think maybe it's a non-chord tone and circle it. Then we have a great one, which is Appoggiatura. This one is approached by a leap and resolved by a step. So a leap is when it's not just a singular step one way or the other. It's going various notes either above or below that original one. So here we have a G that's leaping all the way up to an E. So that E is our Appoggiatura non-chord tone. Big distance here, so that means it's a leap. And then it's resolved by a step and going down to the D. So this one is an escape tone. This one is approached by a singular step and it's left by a leap in the opposite direction. So we have the C stepping one up to a D, and then it's leaping down in the opposite direction that it came from, down to a B. And yes, this is a leap, even though they're only a third apart, it is still a leap because it's not a singular step. And an anticipation is when the non-chord tone is approached by a step or a leap and resolved by the same tone. So we have the C here going down to a B. That's a singular step away. Could be a leap, though, as we see. And it's resolved by the same tone. So it's just going to stay on that B, because you're just anticipating the B to come, and then the B comes and it stays. Let me check. See if anyone has had any questions. Also, if you're in the chat, just let me know if I'm going too fast. I have no problem going back and seeing if we need to review something I've talked about so far. Okay, so this one is a neighbor group. So like we were talking about neighbor tones, this is when there's more than one tone. So it's approached by a step, followed by a leap in the opposite direction that step came from. And then that second note that we just went to is then followed by a step. And that last step we just took, that just goes back to the very first note that we started on. So the best way to explain it is the C here. It's taking a step down to the B, then leaping up to the D, which then returns down to the C. So once again, we have the C here, taking a step down to the B. Then we have the B leaping up to a D, which then goes back down to the C that it started on. Okay. And then we have pedal point. So this is begins on a chord tone, which means it begins on a tone that fits within the chord. So it begins on a, I didn't want to say non-chord tone, but that canceled out. It's just chord tone. So then it becomes a non-chord tone when the other harmonies around it change. So we see here that this fits in, this is a chord tone in this measure, but then as it's being held, the melodies up here, the harmonies are changing, so this does not fit any longer, excuse me. But it's still being held. So that's a pedal point, because like if you were to hold your foot down on a pedal, keep that there. Okay, and then we move on to suspensions. So I did suspensions at the end, and they have their own slides because I think it's worth noting. I remember in my test, I did not look at one of the suspensions and I didn't write it correctly. So I think suspensions are important because they definitely will pop up on a quiz or a test you may have. So suspensions are approached by the same tone, and they are resolved. That's supposed to say step. I will fix that after. Resolved by a step. So I'm just going to go on to this slide because I do not like how this is presented. So suspensions do not have to be prepared with a tie. It just has to be approached by that same tone, like I said. And how we define the suspension is measured by the distance from the bass note. So the bass note is the bottom note right here. So we can have a 4-3 suspension, a 7-6, a 9-8, or a 2-3. So we'll just go through these. So see here, we're approached by the same tone of the C, and it goes down by a step to a B. And the reason this is a 4-3 is because here's our bass note, which is a G, and 4 away from that G, if we were going G, A, B, C, that's 4 intervals away, which means that the B is 3 intervals away, so that's why it's a 4-3. So you would count from this note, which is a G down here, up to what this note is to a C. And same here with the 7-6, it's the same note, and then it's going a step down to the B. And this case, our bass note is D, right down here. So we have a D going to a C, which is D, E, F, G, A, B, C, 7 notes away, and then going to a B, which is 6 intervals away. When I said notes before, I meant intervals, excuse me. And then we have this one here. Like I said, same exact thing. Bass is different. The bass is now a B down here. B going to a C. So that is B. Yes. B going to a C. We know that's an whole octave away plus 1, making it 9. Because an octave is 8 intervals away. So plus 1 would be 9. And going to that octave, 9, 8. And then last but not least, we have a 2-3, and this one actually occurs within the bass here. Okay, so if we go to the slide before, a 2-3 suspension means that the dissonance is in the lower voice, and it still resolves down. Okay. So here we see that it's starting on the C and going down to the B. Cool. So let me stop my share super quick. And I will take you guys to that first resource that I had explained. And it's just a little reference chart that I had made of all the non-chord tones that I think would be helpful to have with you to study. So here we have just the basic definitions of non-chord tones, and then we have each non-chord tone name with an example, what it's approached by, and what it's resolved by. So this is great. I've made it so that everyone can see it. If you go to the AP Music Theory Hub and find it on there, or find it within the slideshow that has been shared on in the slideshow section of the hub. So yeah, it just goes through a bunch of them and uses the examples that I used. It even talks about suspensions. And I'll stop sharing and I'll show you how I set up my notebook for these kinds of notes. This was my original music theory notebook that I still keep, and if you are going into music, I would recommend that you guys keep it as well. Let me find these for you guys. Or you could also print out, here it is. You could also print out that sheet that I shared with you instead of writing it out, but this will be backwards, but I just like to set up that little graph and put what the name is and what it's approached by and left by. And I think there's some more on the back, but I just find that it's super helpful to have those written down somewhere or printed out somewhere, so you don't have to keep going back to a slideshow when you're studying, unless you like to do that. That's also totally fine. I can show you, before we leave, I can show you just where to find that on the AP Music Theory Hub. So I have shared this in the Discord channel. That's hashtag AP Music Theory. It's in the pinned messages on there. And I send it out frequently. So if you scroll up to any of my messages, usually the link to this hub is in there somewhere. But yeah, so you can find the slideshows from all previous office hours in the slideshow tab. And if you scroll all the way down, it has that last one we just did on non-chord tones. And also the phrases and cadences. Takes a minute to get everything organized, but phrases and cadences are in there as well. And if you click on any of these, you'll be able to view them, view the links that are in them. And we also have some ear training resources in here. This has some great YouTube channels, some websites where you can do different exercises, and some YouTube videos as well to help you with your ear training, because I know you can do that when you're sitting in the school with a teacher, but not all of us are able to be in person this this semester. So these are great resources for that. So then if you go to topics and worksheets, you'll see cadences and non-chord tones. We'll go to this one. And this right here at the very top, I put very helpful chart because I think it is. It's that chart I just showed you. You're able to access it in Google Docs, and print it out from there, copy it down from there into your notes. And these are just other links that I find help with resources. The slideshow is also linked in here. And also there are some worksheets. I think this is a packet. And if you just want some practice identifying them in context, totally cool to do that. So there's a bunch of worksheets and resources in all of these topics that are helpful, I think. They helped me when I was preparing for any tests or quizzes. So yeah, that is basically tonight's office hours, but I do want to open up the chat or the discussion to any questions anyone may have. I will stick around for a few minutes if anyone has any questions. That's what I'm here for. I'm here to help you. And I know that we're getting closer and closer to test time, and you can start, realizing, hey, I might not be as proficient with this topic as I am with another, and you want to review it. I will help you do that. Also, if you're in the AP Music Theory channel, which you should be because I'm always sharing different resources and telling you when the office hours are going to be in there, you should join that. If you're in that channel, you saw that I am available also to help you with homework that you may have if you'd like. I'm totally fine with doing that because that's answering your questions, and I'm not going to give you the answers, but I'll help you get there. Yeah, so anyone has any questions? If not, that's also fine. You can reach out to me as well on Discord. So I will tell you my username. So it's Lily Willette. So that's LILYOUILLETTE. And then the hashtag or the number sign 6569. So that's how you can find me. I'm also pretty active in there. So if you see a Lily AP Music Theory TA roaming around, that is me. And feel free to just shoot me a message, even if you just want to say hi. Whatever you would like to do. But yeah, other than that, I think we're all set. Like I said, contact me if you have any questions after the fact that you maybe didn't think of. Totally open to helping you with whatever, because I just want you guys to feel confident in these topics. And what may seem little to you, like phrases, cadences, and non-chord tones, are very, very important in the long run. So yeah, I hope you guys have had a good time, and I will see you next time with office hours. If you have any suggestions or requests for the topics of office hours, totally open to that as well. So see you guys later.